Hi all, if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. My name is Amira, and today guys, we are finally going to be sitting down and talking about rosy bronzers. Now, my journey with rosy bronzers started here with the Phytosurgeons bronzer and then continued with the NYX Buttermelt bronzer, and they kind of like rocked my world a little bit in regards to how bronzer could look on the face and on my skin tone specifically. Most bronzers are those sort of like tan, tawny, golden, warm tones that can oftentimes veer quite orange on the skin, and that's something that I've had an issue with. I've always tried to sort of find bronzers that were more on the neutral side, and what I found with bronzers that have rosy tones is that they are this great sort of middle road of neutral while also warming the face. So I decided, I want to try more. I want to try more rosy bronzer. So I then picked up the Lancome, and then I decided, you know what? Let's do a video about this. Let me try some other formulas. What other rosy bronzers are out there on the market? And I asked you guys in my community tab. You gave me some great suggestions. I didn't buy all of them because some of them were incredibly bougie. And I'll have to look at them in person and really see if they're as rosy as I would like, because we're going to get into it. But that was an issue that I was finding with some of the bronzers that were marketed as rosy, is that they're not quite as rosy as one would like or think. But yes, so we are going to sit down. I'm going to swatch and compare here. I'm going to give you some information on the formulation. I have tried and worn all of these. And I'm going to try and insert some footage of me wearing them or applying them so you can see what they look like on the skin. But yeah, let's get into it. All right, guys, so I figured I'm going to start off, and what's going to be sort of our, I guess you could say our control. It will be the Phytosurgeons Rosy Blaze. This is the Spectral Sunlight Cream Bronzer in Rosy Blaze 6. Now, the one thing I will say that I find so interesting and is that Phytosurgeons, when they released their bronzers, they came out with about, I believe it's 12 shades, but they are half rosy, half warm, and there's a corresponding shade for each. So there's like a warm shade 6 and a rosy shade 6. There's a golden, like a golden shade 7 and a rosy shade 8, which I actually am kind of interested in trying the shade 8. But what I found so interesting is that they were able to do something that even these larger brands that have far more funding, have far more resources, were not able to do, and that is create a full spectrum of rosy undertone bronzer. So the one I have, I said, is Rosy Blaze 6, and it looks like this. As you can see, it is very well loved. I actually haven't used this in a while because I've been testing so many other bronzers, but this is a cream. It's a very unique formula. It's like a cream, and you can see here how neutral that is. So this is Rosy Blaze 6. Do you see how rosy that is? But what I have found is that this is, of all of these that I've tried, the most neutral, like the most like rosy, with no hint of like too much coolness or too much warmth. It's really just a perfect rosy neutral shade. And so I figured this would be the perfect shade to sort of use as our control to see what these other shades look like in comparison. Okay, so this is Rosy Blaze 6. I'm gonna wipe my finger off here because I have quite a lot of bronzer on it. This is Rosy Blaze 6. So I'm gonna take the other bronzer that I then purchased after I purchased the Phytosurgeons, and that was the NYX Buttermelt bronzers. Now I remember when these came out and everyone was like, they were kind of giving these crap because they were like, why are they so pink? And there is a nice range with this this bronzer collection. I have one of the other shades, the slightly deeper shade, the one right after this one, and this one is BMB04 Butter Biscuit. I have the slightly deeper shade, which does veer warm. So what they did is they did a really good job of also creating sort of warm or golden tone and rosy tone. But I will say that having both, this one is more flattering. But what's funny is when you put it up against the Phytosurgence, and I'm gonna try and grab more of this. First of all, the formulation is incredibly pigmented and it's also incredibly silky, and I actually really like this formula. It looks so much warmer, doesn't it? But it's quite rosy on my skin. So again, I'm thinking so far what I've found from wearing these is that the Phytosurgence is truly a neutral rosy tone. Because everything else over here you will see is rosy, either veering really warm or rosy veering really cool and really deep. I wish, like I said, Phytosurgence kind of did the thing with coming out with a lot of shades that are in that rosy undertone, and I really wish, what I was having a hard time finding, guys, is the shades that would work if you are a medium skin tone. What I found is that the rosy tones were either super light or really super deep. And so I did purchase some of the deeper tones, and I have been using them, and I can make them work, mainly because I just don't use a lot of it. But it's sort of interesting that the only shades that I could find with that rosy undertone were like on the opposite ends of the spectrum. There wasn't a lot in the middle. So these two are really the only two that I found that are, well, you'll see. One of the few that I was able to find that are in the like the range for medium to medium deep skin tones. The next one I purchased was the Lancome, and I saw the ads for this and like the promo photos, and I waited and waited and waited because it was so hard to find in the States. And then finally it came to the US. I was able to pick it up. I got it at Nordstrom, and this is what it looks like. She's beautiful. This is the shade. This is the CE Transforming Bronzer in the shade Tan 05. Beautiful, but she looks quite warm in comparison to the Phyto. And look how warm she looks next to Phyto. And even NYX, it looks super warm. On my skin, this reads rosy, and I've used this on camera quite a few times, and I'll try to remember to insert some photos of me wearing this if I can find some. And you'll see that it looks quite warm, like quite rosy, but like warm leaning rosy. It's not orange. It looks quite orange next to these, but it's not warm on my face. Like once I've blended this out, this isn't warm on my face. So it's just really interesting to me comparing this to these two here, and specifically the Phytosurgence, because as you can see, rosy can mean a lot of different things depending on what the interpretation and undertone is. So this is the Lancome, this is the NYX, this is Phyto. Now the next one I purchased, and this one was a bit of a bust. I had been looking at the ones from Sephora, and I had purchased, I'll try to remember the name of the shade and put it on the screen, but I purchased one shade that looked incredibly rosy in the promo pics, and that's an issue, guys, that I kept coming up against, is pictures of bronzers, like swatches looking really rosy, and then getting the bronzer and the bronzer not being rosy at all. I actually wound up returning quite a few bronzers that just were not rosy at all. They just looked rosy in the photos. And so I took it back and I got the shade Coconut Retreat, which looks like this. And as you can see, this is actually pretty deep. Like this is a pretty deep tone, even for my skin. And at first I was really concerned that this wasn't going to, and I've got powder, translucent powder. I was afraid that this wasn't gonna translate well on my skin. But I would say it's one of the better as far as being really good for medium to medium deep skin. And as you can see, it's still slightly more neutral than the Lancome, slightly warmer than the NYX, and then much warmer than the Phytosurgence, which is wild to me. And guys, I wear all of these and they all look rosy on my skin and they all look great on my skin. I just think there is a clear sort of spectrum for rosy, and it's really going to all be based off of your skin tone, your preference, and honestly how much product you use. I think some of these could probably go warm if you apply too much, specifically the Lancome. So this is a Sephora. I actually really like this bronzer. So if you're interested in like trying a rosy bronzer, but you are not trying to like break the bank, I recommend one of these two. I will say that I think this one has more of a learning curve because it is so pigmented, and a lot of people didn't like it when they reviewed it because it was so pigmented. But for me, I found a way to make this work for me. I actually use it with the brush that I use for all of my powder bronzers at the moment. I use the Sigma Soft Sculpt. So this is what I use for all the powder. And I dip in lightly. And honestly, you can dip in and you can do both sides of your face. You do not have to dip in twice. You do not. So this is got a bit more of a learning curve, finding a brush that you like using with it and understanding not to apply too much to your brush. This one is pretty user friendly. Like I haven't had any issues with this, and I actually really love the way it looks on the skin. It's a beautiful bronzer. So if you're looking to try rosy, but you're like, I'm not trying to drop $25, $30, $40, $50 on a bronzer that I might not like, try one of these. Everything that I'm showing is linked in the description box. They are affiliate links, so I will get a small commission if you use my link. But if you're interested, I would say start here. Start somewhere where you feel comfortable that if it's something that you don't like, you haven't wasted a ton of money. But I was actually really, really surprised at how much I like this one. And I actually like this one more than a couple of the higher end ones that we're going to talk about in a moment. But yes, this is actually really nice. And again, this is Coconut Retreat. Now, if you are of a lighter skin tone than me, I would say look at the range in store if you can, because the pictures are incredibly inaccurate on the Sephora website, because there is a shade that I purchased that looked so rosy. And if you look up rosy bronzers, like if you Google rosy bronzers, that shade for Sephora is what came up. And that's why I purchased it. And it's not rosy at all. It's actually quite orange, like quite orange. So I would say if you're not my skin tone or around my skin tone, I think if you're my skin tone, this is the perfect match for you. This will work great for you. If you're lighter or deeper, try them out in store. And same goes for the NYX. You can probably find these. Although I will say I think the swatches for these online are far more accurate than the Sephora ones. But yeah, just make sure that you're like really looking at maybe swatches on skin if you can find them. Next up, we have the two bronzers that I had been sort of circling around and thinking about, and I was like, maybe. And then when I posted on my community tab what rosy bronzers you guys recommended, these came up quite a bit. So I purchased them. And so these are the MAC bronzers in Matte Rich Rosy Skin Finish and Radiant Rich Rosy Skin Finish. Now, when I first purchased these guys, I was like, I don't know. I feel like this is quite deep for me, and I don't usually go this deep with my bronzers. And I also was just sort of like, when I first wore this one, and this is the Radiant, I was not impressed. I wasn't feeling it. I was like, I don't know. And with the Radiant one, I'm still finding myself having a bit of a learning curve with it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Again, these swatched out can look so warm on the skin, but they're not. So this is Radiant Rich Rosy. And again, I had to go quite deep in the range because I am not a deep skin tone, but I think this is like the deepest shade, or the second deepest shade that they have. So again, I wish brands like MAC would expand their bronzer range if they're going to have rosy tones, to make sure that there is a rosy tone for each section of their skin, of their like range. So if you have, pale, light, then there should be at least one rosy bronzer, medium, tan, medium, deep, at least one rosy bronzer, and then deep, a rosy bronzer. What I found was there was a deep rosy bronzer and there was a pale rosy bronzer, and there was nothing in the middle. So for me, I like these, but again, these are incredibly pigmented, and I do find that I have to go in with the light hand. So this is the Radiant one. I've worn this a few times. I don't hate it. I think I want to live with it a little bit longer, but I wasn't as impressed with it as I was hoping I would be, because you guys, I love a shimmer. I mean, this NYX one, this is one of the reasons why I love it, is because it has a bit of shimmer to it. So it just gives this beautiful glow to the skin. And this does give that. I just find that it's incredibly kind of hard to blend. Like the complaints people had about this one are the complaints that I have about the MAC one, is that I feel like even when I put a little bit on my brush, it can be hard to get it to blend properly. So again, I feel like this has a bit of a learning curve to it. You can see how radiant that is. It's so beautiful. But yeah, I'm still trying to learn how to work with that one. And then we have the matte one. And this one, I feel like I wore it the other day, and I haven't worn this one as much as the radiant, because I am more of a radiant girly. And you can see here what it looks like on my hand, on my finger. And you can see that this one is way more pigmented than the radiant one. And I have the same complaints. This is like, you guys, this is so pigmented. And I always find that I make the mistake of dipping back in with my brush. Like I'll use, because I've been using this brush, I'll dip in, do one side of my face and it's fine. And then I'll make the mistake of dipping in again and then going on the other half of my face. The struggle is real. So I would say, if you're gonna try this, use it the same way that I recommend doing this. Dip in once, lightly apply, and then whatever's left on your brush, go into the other side and blend, because you will have enough on your brush. But I will say this one is probably, of all of these, the most actually rosy. If you can, I don't know if the camera's picking it up as well as I can see it in all my lighting, but this is the rosiest of all of these. And it looks beautiful on the skin. It really does. Like I tend to not love matte bronzers. I love the Phytosurgeons because it's a cream. You get that skin-like finish, that skin-like texture. And with this one, the NYX one, you get a beautiful glow. And the same goes for these two here. The Lancome gives this beautiful, like, natural satin finish. Like it looks like it's not going to give glow because it's matte, but it has this beautiful, the way it blends, like the texture of this one is stunning. And you guys have seen me use this on camera. I'll try to put a card up of the last time I used this in a video, and I got so many compliments on how beautiful this bronzer looked. It's stunning. This one, I think, is just as stunning. You just have to really, it's a learning curve with application, but I think it's worth it. And honestly, even though I tend to be a radiant girl, I'm liking the way this looks overall on my skin more than the radiant. And again, I'm going to continue to play with these. They're not going anywhere in my collection right now. But I had worn this, I'd used this once, and I had such a hard time blending it that it kind of scared me off. And I was using the radiant, and I'm like, I'm not really loving it. And then the other day I was like, you know, I'm about to sit down and film this video. I want to try this some more, and so I can have some more cohesive thoughts about it. And I used it. I had the same issue with blending, but I was able to make it work. But once I was done and I had all my makeup on, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so pretty on. I think if you're my skin or a tad deeper, I don't know why this would be considered, this is rich rosy, and I think this is the deepest shade. I think they need another, maybe 1 or 2 shades deeper than this, but this is such a stunning shade. So if you are my skin tone, I mean, proceed with caution as far as application, but I think it's worth it to, you know, once you get the hang of it. I'm going to continue to use it because I really love the way my skin looked with this on. Then we have the one, I thought I was done, and then Ilia, I saw that Ilia had come out with one, and I don't know if this is new. I've been so out of the loop, you guys, when it comes to a lot of like makeup releases, because I've just been so busy and I just haven't been paying attention, and a lot of the stuff is just not interesting. It's one of the reasons why you haven't seen me sit down and do a new makeup releases video in a minute, because a lot of the stuff I'm just like, meh. But I might do one for fall when there's releases so we can talk about what's coming out for the season. But I saw this on, I think it was Sephora's website, yeah, and I was just sort of like, what? And then I saw they were coming to Ulta, and I was placing an order with Ulta for some other stuff, so I was like, you know what, let's throw this in. So this is the Ilia Sunshift Cream Bronzer in the shade Basque, and this is a cream Radiant Bronzer. So, and it's very creamy. Of the creamy ones, of like this is much creamier than the Phytosurgent, and it is much more pigmented. So this is Basque. Can you see how insanely pigmented and like glowy that is? And it is rosy. It is rosy. And it has, this is one that when I first applied it, I didn't know how I felt, because I felt like it was maybe a tad too dark on my skin. But I tried it again and I really liked it. This is, I think, if you're, how do I put it? I feel like if you are okay with having pigment, usually cream products can be sort of more natural finish, and that's kind of the issues. Like the Phytosurgents will give you an incredibly natural, lightly bronzed look. I understand the owner, Jason, said that if you want more pigment, to go up to the rosy shade 8. So if you use rosy 6 like I do and you want a bit more, he says to go up to shade 8, which is one of the reasons why I'm interested in eventually picking that up, just to compare and to see if when I'm looking for a little bit more, will that be a good option. But when I'm going for like a natural bronze look and I kind of want that no makeup look, and you just want to look like yourself but better, this is what I go for. This is going to give you bronzed glow. Like this is not no makeup. This is, you've got bronzer on and it's glowy and beautiful. It doesn't look bad when I say that, oh, you've got bronzer on. I just mean that it is not going to give that soft, natural vibe. Your skin is going to look bronzed and glowy. It is incredibly pigmented. And as you can see, it is quite creamy. And I'll compare for you the cream factor here, because it's night and day. So the Phytosurgents one is quite thick. And as you can see, this one has a bit of a learning curve to it as well, as far as application goes. But you can see I had to really rub my finger in there to get product. And as you can see with this one, I'm just like, I mean, can you see how different and how much more emollient this one is? This one applies beautifully. So even though I would say you have to find a brush that you like to use this with and that picks up the product in the way that you like, I have 2 brushes that I use. I use this one from Units. The handle is like, I've like ruined the hand. I need to wash it again. But this is literally from like setting spray and stuff. So this is the Unit 303. And this is the brush that I like to use for my Phytosurgents. And this is the brush here that I've been using for the Ilia. And this is why it's dirty, because I was using the Ilia with it. This is Unit 304. So these are both really dense, but this one is more like uniformly shaped, and this one is angled. And this is what I use for this, because what I find with this, because it's so pigmented, is I like something that I can dip in and get really good control with. And this gives me really good control, because I can kind of just like place the product and then slowly blend it where I want it blended. So I would say with this, you don't use a fluffy brush. Don't use a brush that you don't have a lot of control over. Pick something that's dense and that's easy for you to place the product and then blend it in. Because as you can see, this is incredibly emollient, and this will move around. This one is not as like, it applies to the skin beautifully, but it's not hard to control. It's like you place it, you blend it, you're done. This one is like you place it, you blend it lightly, and then you're done. And then finally we have the RMS Redimension Hydra Bronzer, and I was on the fence about what I was going to get. I was looking at a couple of shades. There are 4 shades in the range, if I remember correctly. Yes, 4 shades in the range. They need more shades. And the reason why I say that is they have what I would consider 2 rosy shades and 2 warm shades, but the 2 rosy shades are, there's one for the lighter tone and one for medium, and I don't really feel like there's really one for deep. I'm gonna try and put the picture up of what the swatches look like, and so you guys can see. So the one that I have is I believe it's the 3rd one, and it is the what shade is this? I think this is Bikini Beach. Yes, Bikini Beach. So in the pictures, in the swatch, you can see that that is incredibly rosy toned. And then I got this in the mail and I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me, this is look rosy to me. This is a bronzer. This is bronze. And I was a little irritated. I was like, okay, the pictures are giving me a different story, yo. Like, what gives? What's good, RMS? So, but I was like, no, Amira, try it out, see how you feel. So, this is what the RMS looks like next to Basque. Or Basque. I was like, Basque. Actually, it's more rosy on skin than it is in pan. And on my skin, when I blended it out, it actually looked quite rosy. So I will say, don't freak out if you're like me and you're like, this doesn't look rosy. I think if you're my skin tone or a little bit deeper, it's gonna look bronzy on you. If you are lighter than me, I don't think so. I think you're gonna have to go with the shade, and I believe it's called, I don't remember what the lightest shade is, but there's the lightest shade that they have, and that is the other rosy tone in the in the collection of bronzers. That one would probably work better for you. These are incredibly pigmented, but they're not pigmented in the way that like these two are. This blends beautifully. This has such a natural glowy state. I would compare it actually in formulation to the NYX, except the NYX is more pigmented. So in the sense of like how much gets picked up on the brush. Like with this one, I feel like I can pick up quite a lot on the brush and I can blend it out and I won't feel like I'm losing control of the product as I apply it. With the NYX one, that can be the case because it's so pigmented. But I was actually really surprised by this. Now, even here, I feel like it looks more like a traditional bronzer. And it's, you know, not as warm as, say, the Lancome, which looks so tan, looks so orange. It's wild to me how orange this looks on my hand because on my face, it looks like a rosy bronzer. It's wild. The spectrum you have here of these bronzers that really are all rosy toned, but as you can see, the spectrum for rosy can be so dramatic. All right, guys, so just to sort of wrap up what we're talking about here and what I was saying, as you can see, the spectrum is quite large as far as what's rosy and what's, you know, what rosy can look like. I would say a lot of it is trial and error. I bought a bunch of bronzers. You don't have to do that. I make content. That's one of the reasons why I did this. I probably would not have bought all these bronzers if I were not making a video about rosy bronzers. I don't need all of these. But I would say the biggest takeaway that I have from this little experiment, this little project, is if you can try them in store, if you can swatch them in store, do so. I am not an in-store shopper. I like the thrill of, you know, is it gonna work? I don't know. I'm the girl who blind buys fragrance online. Like that's just kind of my vibe. If that is not your vibe, if you do not like going into the deep unknown with your makeup purchases, go in store if you can. If it's available in store, I say go in store because as you can see, the range is very large. All of these look rosy on my face. My camera stopped. All of these are rosy on me. All of them, including this one that is hella orange. This is rosy, this is rosy. All of these are rosy on me in varying ways. And the finishes of them and the formulations of them change the way how rosy it actually looks. So again, if you can swatch in store, if you can try on in store, do so. It is very much, I've been finding, a trial and error kind of thing. And what I'm loving though is that by seeing this huge range of like undertone that's still veer rosy, I feel that everyone could probably find one that a rosy tone that works for them. You know, as you can see, like this is all that would works for my skin tone. So I had to, you know, I was shopping for me specifically, but if you're shopping for yourself and you're lighter or deeper, I think you're gonna, you know, you're gonna have options. I do hope that a lot of these companies that have these rosy tones and have these bronzer collections expand them, because again, I say to you, if Vital Surgeons, which is an independently owned brand, can do it, RMS should be able to do it. You know what I mean? And, you know, Ilia should be able to do it. MAC should be able to do it. I did find that and this is just an aside, it is just because I was doing this video and looking for something so specific, it really brought to light the fact that most bronzer collections are incredibly limited in what they offer as far as shade diversity and as far as undertone goes. What I did notice, and I think is kind of cool, is that a lot of the rosy tones that I was finding were in the deeper tones. And I was like, wow, those are beautiful. So if you are of a deeper skin tone than me, if you are a deep, rich, deep dark, I think you're going to have a good time in your rosy bronzer journey, because I think there are quite a few out there that have that really pretty rosy tone that looks so good on deep skin tones. And I just think rosy bronzers are the future, babe. I really do. I think I haven't reached for any of my other bronzers, and I love bronzer and I own a lot of bronzer. But because I've been doing this experiment, I've been only reaching for these, but I've honestly only wanted to reach for these. I think the last time I used a non-traditional, like a traditional toned bronzer, it was the Armani liquid bronzer, because I love the finish of that one. It looks so good on the skin. But while I was applying it, I was thinking to myself, man, if this was like rosier in this formulation, wow. That's what I was thinking, and I still feel that way. Like, I love that liquid bronzer, but I'm like, if it had a little bit of rosiness to it, it'd be perfect. So yeah, I think rosy bronzer is a really great option if you're someone who doesn't like bronzer. If you're a blush girly, but you want a little bit more warmth to your skin and you can't really achieve that with blush like you really want to, I think rosy is the way to go. If you're someone who's constantly battling that Oompa Loompa look, who's always trying to find something and everything veers orange on you, try to find a neutral toned rosy bronzer. I recommend this one for that. If you're looking for something that is truly neutral, because everything goes orange on you, the Phytosurgence is hands down the best one for that. Their tones are so, what I love about these tones, and I know I'm just ranting and raving about the Phytosurgence, but because this is the first one and this is the control, and this is the one that I've had the longest, I've had a lot of experience with this. And the thing that I love the most about this, and that I've seen these used on so many skin tones. There is someone, I believe her new handle is Makeup by Afshi. She's done some of the promo work for Phyto, just like swatch work. And she is a richer tone than me. She's warmer than me, and she's slightly deeper than me, and she wears this shade exactly, and it looks amazing on her. So that's what I mean, where I feel like if you can spend a little bit more to avoid getting something that is too warm, then I would recommend this one. I think the Phytosurgence are like, I'll put the price in the description box, but this is like 20 something, so it's not like drugstore priced, but it's not super duper expensive. And I think it's worth it. This is a Canadian company, so if you order from them, it's going to maybe take a little bit to get it, but not a ton. Like, I've never had to wait, forever, never for a Phytosurgence order. But if you are someone who really wants to try rosy bronzer and you don't want the trial and error or the mystery of, is this going to go orange on me? Get the Phytosurgence. It's so neutral. It's just neutral, and it has the rosiness, but it's neutral. It's not going to make you look orange. It's not going to be too cool tone. Like, this looks like it maybe go gray on me. It does not. It does not at all, because my skin is neutral with slightly golden undertones. So for me, when I'm wearing something really warm, all it does is just make me look orange. If I'm wearing something that's really cool, it makes me look cascade gray. This one is such a great straight down the middle tone. It's just a beautiful straight down the middle tone. So if you're looking for something super bougie and expensive, and if you've seen the video where I use this and you see the finish on this, don't let this scare you. This looks so warm, but it's really not this warm on me, guys. It's really not. And I'm gonna remember to leave the video where I use this in the description, but this is such, of all the powder ones here, this is my favorite. It's such a beautiful formulation. It is Lancome. It is higher end. It's more expensive than I think any of the other ones on this table, including the MAC, but it's just so nice. And I mean, look at this packaging. I mean, I have my fingerprints all over it, so I gotta wipe it down. But oh my, I mean, look at this, guys. Look at this packaging, and the bronzer is like rose. It's like a rose print. Oh. All right, guys. So yes, these are my recommendations for various reasons. So this is, if you're looking for a drugstore, you want to just try something cheap and quick, you know, try one of these. If you want something that is foolproof, fell-proof, not foolproof, felt-proof, yeah, felt-proof, that is easy to apply, you don't have to worry about it, Phytosurgeon. If you want to be bougie as hell and you want to try something that has just an insanely beautiful formulation, and that, the Lancome. All of the other ones are great, but these are the ones that I would say right off the bat, kind of like, this one knocked it out of the park for me. This is the one that started it all. This one, I was shocked at how good this is, and I was shocked at how good this was, and this is just stunning. All of these other ones are great, but I'm just saying that if you're just starting your rosy bronzer journey and you want to cut out the, you know, the mystery or the likelihood of not being happy with your purchase, I say these four are amazing options. Yeah, so let me know in the comments down below, guys, if you like this type of video. Do you like this kind of deep dive where I try, you know, various brands, products in sort of like the same type of formula, you know, formulation or color range? If you like that, let me know, because this was a lot of fun. It took time, and I'm sorry that it took me longer than I wanted, because I had some hiccups with bronzers. I'd ordered some bronzers, guys, that looked rosy, that were very much not on the skin or in swatches. So it kind of just slowed the process down a bit, but I enjoyed sort of like, I'm one of those people who really, I think I would have been a really, really great personal shopper. I'm one of those people who can find things. I've done it for friends. I'm really good at sourcing items. And so I had a good time sourcing these items for this video. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. If you have any questions about any of these, let me pop them in the comments down below, and I'll you know, try to elaborate on anything specific. And let me know in the comments if you have tried a rosy bronzer. Has this piqued your interest in trying a rosy bronzer? Let me know. And if you enjoyed today's video, guys, please be sure to hit the like button. Also, please be sure to subscribe. By liking, commenting, or subscribing, it pushes my content out to more eyes in the YouTube algorithm, and that always helps out my channel. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye now.